Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Joining me now is Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, former Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell. Colonel, thank you so much for joining us on this. I first want to get your reaction over the last hour and a half or so, hearing first from the President and then Senator Lindsey Graham.
Well, I hate to rain on the parade of hagiography, but I'm 75 years old. I've seen 3 presidents embroiled in impeachment, and what I saw in the background was the shadow of impeachment. What I saw in the foreground was a president trying to use this spectacular success, not by the president, but by those Delta forces on the ground, pilots, soldiers, and everything, to essentially show himself as a very pragmatic, a very practical, a very detail-oriented, a very capable commander-in-chief and president. So that's the way I see it. He's using this, Lindsey Graham, the same thing. I know Lindsey well. He's using this to kind of attenuate some of the pressure that's building around him with regard to impeachment. Significant pressure in my mind.
I actually want to bring up a tweet that the president made, if we have it, guys, let's bring it up, about then President Obama after the killing of Osama bin Laden. And he basically says President Obama cannot take credit for the killing of Osama bin Laden. So do you feel like he is doing that here, despite the fact that he said that then?
I think President Trump has a real psychological hang-up with President Obama and trying to outdo him in everything that he possibly did or undo whatever he did. And I'm not singing President Obama's praises. I'm just saying that that is a debilitating factor for this president. Sometimes it works out, as with this incident, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it looks very dangerous, like with the nuclear agreement with Iran. Let's look at the region right now. Lindsey Graham is standing up there talking about how everything is so wonderful. Iraq is falling apart. We had 2,000 casualties over the last week, over 130 people killed. Egypt, I have students in Cairo who tell me that they're getting ready to do another Tahrir Square against Sisi. Look at Syria. Look at the area between Turkey and Syria. Look at Iran. Look at what we're doing with the incredible blockade we have on Iran. We're giving them no choice but to strike back, and to strike back wherever they can, and I look for more. This is not a region that is growing peaceful, Lindsey. This is a region that is getting ready to explode yet again.
You think, though, Colonel, this is something that the senator knew 3 weeks ago when he came out against the policy that the president had to pull troops out of northern Syria. But in fact, he has now made an about-face when being asked about that policy, saying, I like what I see that's happening in Syria.
Absolutely, because Lindsey is doing everything he can to help the president fight off this pressure of impeachment.
What do you make of the blatant mention of oil over and over again and the protection of these oil fields by both the senator and the president?
First, I say that the oil sales for ISIS have many times retreated into the past as their major source of revenue because they've had to fracture that revenue and go for other things. But I will say 0.2% of the world's oil reserves are in Syria. What are we talking about here? We certainly aren't talking about the billions of barrels that are in Iraq or still in Saudi Arabia or in Iran. So this is another manufactured reason. The real reason the Pentagon talked the president into not continuing with his withdrawal and leaving the U.S. forces there is they are positioned to try and keep Iran from gaining any real foothold vis-a-vis Israel in particular in Syria. And they're also positioned to keep Assad honest with regard to his deal for autonomy for the Kurds, whom we have sort of abandoned. So I understand the strategic reasons for keeping them there, but rest assured it isn't oil.
But Colonel, did this president, did this administration choose oil fields over the lives of our Kurdish allies?
I don't think so, because it happens, as Lindsay pointed out and the president alluded to, it happens to link up because the Kurds are in the best position, just as the Kurds did in northern Iraq, where they turned their oil revenues with Baghdad's opposition abated. They turned their oil revenues into a really good economy in the north of Iraq. Now they are taking on millions of Kurdish refugees from Syria, so they're going to be destabilized too. So getting these refugees back into northern Syria, getting a deal for some sort of autonomy from Assad, from Damascus, and a relaxation on the Syrian regular forces' pursuit of the Kurds, and a relaxation from Erdogan's pursuit of the Kurds, and letting them get their revenues in order, they can be the best protection for this little bit of oil that's in Syria. And we won't have abandoned them completely.
It is Monday, the 28th of October of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Oh my, what a weekend, huh? Well, so much happened. We had the really big story, and I don't know, it seemed like a whimpering wag the dog, but hey. What was even more fun was a World Series game. Now, my team, let's put it this way, the team that I am cheering for, because they are the National League team, who also happens to be named the Nationals. Fancy that. And the reason that I always root for the National League team is because the pitcher has to bat. Otherwise, it's not only not baseball, it's also un-American. Jeez. All right, so we had a visitor that showed up at the stadium, quite low-key as an announcement, and I wonder why. It wasn't his choice that it was low-key, by the way. No. But the owners did. And they wanted it so low-key, they didn't want to be seated anywhere near this visitor. And who was this visitor? Some people might say it was the President of the United States, and others might say it was Donnie Trump. And he was roundly booed, because after all, it is a baseball game. You should hear what they say to the ump. I mean, I will say, if anybody said to Donnie Trump what they normally say to the ump, they would be visited by the Secret Service. But that's not what happened. Roundly booed, and then with chance of lock him up, which is actually a plea for the rule of law, especially when we apply it. And who are we? Reasonable Americans who think that the pitcher must bat. Otherwise, it's not baseball, and it is completely un-American. I never watched that morning show with Scarborough and Mika. Is it Micah? No, I know it's Mika. I only know what I read. But I know more than that. I've seen that show, but it's not one that I would want to follow on a regular basis. But they were all a tisk about booing the President of the United States. They were not booing the office. We love the office of the President of the United States. But the current occupant is who they are booing. Come on, Joe. Wake up. Of course, I made the analogy about what what the fans do and say to the ump, because I don't boo the ump. I will say that the ump has a certain anonymous character with the mask and all, so that you are kind of booing the office of the umpire. But it's the specific actions of that particular umpire not able to call the ball. It was way outside a ball, but has to call it a strike at just the most inopportune time, depending on what team you are on. So there is that. But in this instance, your visage is broadcast on the Jumbotron for the whole stadium to see. It might trigger a certain reaction among many there. And I have to say, many there are not poor people. You have to pay quite a bit of money to be able to get into a World Series game. I know seat prices dropped precipitously since the Nationals haven't been able to get run support. What happened to their run support? Jeez. Since they came from so far behind in the season, they've had run support. Now all of a sudden it's collapsed like it was in the beginning of the season. What's up with that? I don't know. Maybe they're going to pull out a comeback again. They better do it quick. We only got one more game. Well, yeah, it would be one more game if they lose another one. Don't do that. Okay, so you got the baseball. We have a story. Well, actually, we've had a couple of stories about the raid. Trump is saying that this is bigger than getting Osama bin Laden, and what ISIS did was bigger than the toppling of the Twin Towers. And he forgets to mention about the Pentagon. What's up with that, too? Because he only knows what he reads, and he doesn't read. Let's be clear about that. If this guy only knows what he reads and he doesn't read, then it's going to be what's put in front of him is what he knows. And apparently he doesn't know that the Pentagon was attacked that day, too, because he never mentions that. Feature? Not a bug? I don't know. It might just be, his poorly educated, education-themed school. With all that's going on in the world, we do have a curated show for you today. And so we do have a couple of stories about the raid. But what else is on the menu here? Well, public land workers are confronting an increase in violent threats and assaults as U.S. agencies fail to come up with any security plans. Is that a feature or a bug? I don't know. I'm just being rhetorical. I have my opinion about that, and everything, as a matter of fact. It took a stunt by a left-leaning PAC. But Facebook did take down an ad that claimed Lindsey Graham supported the Green New Deal. Well, they'll take down that. We'll see if they take down any others, like, I don't know, Ben Shapiro's rag. Will they ever take any of that down? I doubt it. And with almost 100,000 evacuated from Sonoma County alone, and another 250,000 in the region under evacuation orders, 102-mile-per-hour gusts have exploded fires throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. Just don't call it climate change. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where tens of thousands of young Iraqis protesting the extreme income inequality of the Abdul Madhi government have taken over Tahir Square in defiance of the bloody crackdown that's killed scores over the weekend. And it takes a special kind of special ops unit to dig through the rubble of a collapsed tunnel, retrieve tissue samples, and then get the results of a DNA test in 15 minutes. But Trump said they did, so it must be true. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. Do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Though how we keep this powerhouse of resistance radio resisting is really what comes out of our own pockets and wallets, too. We would be unable to do any of this without you, and we thank you for your generosity over these many years and allowing us to fulfill our civic duty of resistance as the founders originally intended. So many decades ago. Almost an eon now when you think about it. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. And follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And most importantly, I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime and then get that out in social media for your linking pleasure. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, really, wherever podcasts can be found. And we're there. There's billions of them now, I think. I'm pretty sure, billions. Okay. Oh, I wanted to give a little personal note. I had a lovely visit with my granddaughters over the weekend. Came down to go with my nieces and my sister and sister-in-law, niece-in-law. Yeah, niece-in-law and my sister, to some sort of Halloween costume bash for the kids, and it was really quite lovely. And just coincidentally, my youngest granddaughter turned 10 at the end of the week. So there was that little celebration too. They grow so fast. And my soon-to-be 17-year-old granddaughter, boy, I mean, she just started driving, and now she's going to be like 17. What's up with that? And what we're here is with the younger granddaughter, and it was great. So I had a really lovely time with them, and I don't ever get to see them enough because, well, that's how it is, isn't it? They have their lives now. It's going to be harder now that, you got the teenager. Though, she's great. Oh, well, even my grandson, but he's in college. He's a sophomore in college now. They grow so fast. Well, we better get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Well, this is by the Associated Press, but out of Share Blue Media. Federal employees overseeing U.S. public lands were assaulted or threatened at least 360 times over a 5-year period, marked by heightened tensions with anti-government groups and dwindling ranks of law enforcement officers, a congressional watchdog agency said. The Government Accountability Office, in a new report, highlights anti-government tensions that at times have boiled over, including that 6-week armed occupation of a federal wildlife refuge in Oregon in 2016 and other standoffs with armed protesters in Montana and Nevada. Now, when we say armed protesters, really what we're talking about are armed white nationalists. Let's be clear. Their agenda isn't just about land use, though that is a big part of it. Because they want to be able to use your land. And I'm not talking public lands like your land. I'm talking about your privately owned property. They're going to trespass on it, cause forest fires. The next thing you know, you're driven away and they get the land. Land baron BS has been happening out here in the West because of these lawless yahoos. We're talking about the Bundys here. The Bundys and their movement, or the movement they're a part of, and that they have exploded because a lot of weirdo extremists have picked up on this. To the point now that if you work for the Bureau of Land Management, you don't want people to know that. And it makes it sound like everybody in Oregon is like a, wild-haired white nationalist yahoo. Well, it's not everybody. But it is a very vocal minority, and they are heavily armed. Yeah, they need to protect their property so they can steal yours. Ford of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Facebook Inc. said on Saturday that it had removed an ad which falsely claimed that U.S. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham supported the Green New Deal, demonstrating that it will fact-check ads from political groups that are not politicians. The ad, which ran on Friday, was put up as a stunt by a left-leaning political action committee called the Really Online Lefty League to test Facebook's political ad policies. Facebook has been criticized in recent weeks over its decision to not fact-check ads run by politicians, drawing ire from Democratic candidates running in the 2020 election for president, such as former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, but what about Kamala? I wonder why she's not mentioned, though she's the one who's been fairly vocal. Last week, Facebook chief executive Mark Zuckerberg defended Facebook's policy, saying that the company did not want to stifle political speech. Really? Then how come liberal groups tend to get banned in really high volume numbers? What's up with that? Facebook spokesman Tom Chennick said on Friday that since the new ad came from a political action group rather than a politician, it was eligible for review by the company's third-party fact-checking partners. The ad came days after Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez grilled Zuckerberg on whether Facebook would permit her to run such an ad. The very same one that she described was run. And you know what? They were able to block it. But I'll tell you this, the anti-vax ads get pushed to the top, and the ones that say, go get your shots, are disputed and taken off as fake news. Weird how that works, huh? Senator Graham's office said that it was aware of the ad and confirmed the senator opposes the Green New Deal. Facebook and other social media platforms are under pressure to police misinformation on their platforms. But, they want to be, on the one hand, a news organization of sorts, but they have no fealty to the truth. And then they want to maybe not be a telephone company because they might be regulated for disseminating lies like propaganda, which is against the law in the United States of America when in tandem with government actors. For instance, on Friday, Facebook started to test Facebook News, a new section of its mobile app dedicated to, quote, high-quality news, end quote. But the company came under fire from some political activists. How about journalism schools? How about that? Over its decision to include right-wing news site Breitbart News as one of its Facebook news publishers. Facebook said that Breitbart is an unpaid partner, unlike some outlets in the section. And Breitbart News did not immediately respond to a request for comment, and yet Breitbart was wholly involved with the Cambridge Analytica scandal with Facebook. A Facebook spokeswoman told Reuters that if any Facebook news publisher posts misinformation, the publisher will no longer be eligible for Facebook news. Really? Then how come they have all those anti-vax ads from reputable publishers? Amy Graff and Alex Martashu of the San Francisco Chronicle brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. CAL FIRE announced it will be holding a news conference at 9 a.m. this morning, Monday, with the latest news from the Kincaid fire. Overnight, the fire grew to 66,231 acres. Containment is still at 5%. Fire activity was moving swiftly towards Lakefield, Wickiup, and Mark West, two unincorporated communities of Sonoma County, north of Santa Rosa. Sheriff's deputies were using sirens to warn any remaining residents and order them to evacuate immediately. An immediate evacuation order for the neighborhood around Fott Road from Shiloh to Old Redwood Highway, and the neighborhood is east of Highway 101 and south of Shiloh Ranch Regional Park. Residents have already been warned to evacuate, but deputies made a final pass through the area to ensure everyone was out after 10:30 this morning and again at 6 a.m. Containment of the massive Kincaid fire has dropped down to 5% due to vicious winds on the fire lines. The morning began at a 10% containment of the blaze, but gusts of over 102 miles per hour helped spread the flames rapidly. The fire has reached the edge of the town of Windsor, and CAL FIRE said the fire line was holding steady there for now. It looks like we have about a 24-hour window of favorable weather Monday and Tuesday, though there is no rain in the forecast through the end of the month. No additional evacuation orders have been issued, though there is an update just coming in. Firefighters are now facing an even greater setback on containment of the Kincaid fire, as it has now devoured 84 square miles, dozens of homes, and have now sent almost 200,000 people fleeing. Mandatory evacuations have been ordered across the North Bay to the Pacific Coast. Contact your local fire officials and government officials for further information. Well, we better get to our break. And if we get any more breaking news on that, we'll pick it up on the other side. And we will also go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You were listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Lord of the Flies meets Beasts of No Nation. Manos is one of those films where the backgrounds of the various characters remain shrouded. Indeed, we never know where the story is set, only that it's somewhere in the mountains and jungles of South America, and follows a group of FARC-like teenage guerrillas with names like Wolf, Rambo, and Boom Boom. They carry out the orders of their scary commander, who only shows up sporadically. Director Alejandro Landes never resolves how the teens ended up in their situation, although it's hinted that some of them may have been kidnapped. In any case, they're given the job of guarding an American captive known only as Doctora, who is being held for ransom. Doctora, played by Julianne Nicholson, speaks little Spanish and is often as lost as the audience. Left to their own devices, the kids are tasked with moving Doctora from a mountain base down to one in the jungle. More indoctrinated into a warped 21st century version of machismo than they are socialized, Manos quickly becomes reminiscent of the classic Lord of the Flies. There's even a pig's head. Manos is less about individuals or a specific event than it is about the concepts of humanity, especially developing humanity. When derailed, as in the case of child soldiers, well, the title Manos is the Spanish word for monkeys. Though the concept here may be less than original, this film reminds us of how thin the veneer of civilization can be. Nicholson performs notably as Doctora, especially given the little dialogue she has. The young actors bring off sweet to savage with skills past their years. Cinematographer Jasper Wolf's shooting juxtaposes the gorgeous with the brutal here to create an impactful film which is beautiful, harsh, and wild, and likely to stay with you. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. I'm Suzanne Bard. The Sahara Desert, where daytime temperatures can reach 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Not many organisms can survive in this harsh environment, but an insect called the Saharan silver ant thrives. They scurry out onto the sand from their protected nests to gather up the carcasses of less fortunate insects that have died from the heat.
The hotter the day, the more insect bodies they will find, the more food they have.
Sarah Pfeffer, an animal behaviorist at Ulm University in Germany. She says that to avoid sinking into the Saharan sand dunes, where they could meet the same fate as their lunch, silver ants have to be fast. To document just how quickly the ants move, Pfeffer and her colleagues set up high-speed cameras above a channel between the entrance to the hungry ant's nest and a food source. The researchers recorded top speeds approaching 35 inches per second.
But if you really look how big the animals are and you calculate the body length per second, you come up with a walking speed that is an astonishing 108 body lengths per second.
That figure makes them the fastest known ant on the planet. By comparison, cheetahs top out at about 16 body lengths per second. The videos revealed how the ants achieve such prodigious speeds. As they accelerate, their leg movements become synchronized. They increase their stride length by bringing all 6 feet off the sand at once, which Pfeffer describes as a gallop.
Really, all legs are lifted from the ground. They are in air, but it's not jumping. It's a very smooth run that they have.
Pfeffer says they're thus faster than a closely related ant species called Cataglyphus fortis, which has longer legs but a less impressive airborne phase. That ant only reaches about 24 inches per second, or 2/3 of the silver ant's max. The study appears in the Journal of Experimental Biology. The Saharan silver ant's breakneck speeds may be impressive, but 2 insects are even faster. The California coastal mite and the Australian tiger beetle, both of which also thrive at near-lethal temperatures. Seems that, to beat the heat, it pays to be fleet. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Suzanne Bard.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. Occasional aches and pains are an expected part of life, but for many people, pain is a constant companion. Dr. Chad Helmick is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. He's joining us today to discuss ways to manage chronic pain. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you.
Chad, how many people in the U.S. suffer from chronic pain?
In 2016, 50 million adults had chronic pain, which is pain on most or every day in the past 6 months. More interesting, though, is that 20 million people have high-impact chronic pain, which is chronic pain that also limits their work or life activities on most or every day in the past 6 months. This is a problem because chronic pain is associated not only with symptoms, but with anxiety and depression, reduced quality of life, and the risk of opioid problems.
What are the most common causes of chronic pain?
The most common causes generally relate to bones and joints, like low back pain and arthritis, but there are many other causes: headaches, sickle cell disease, fibromyalgia, surgery and injuries, and many, many others.
Is chronic pain more common in any particular group of people?
Yes, it occurs at all ages, but it's more common in older middle-aged adults and in the oldest 85 and older. It's also more common in women, poor people, and those who live in rural areas.
How is chronic pain treated?
Well, the first thing to do is to get a diagnosis, which can help guide treatment. But the thinking about chronic pain now is that it becomes a chronic disease by itself, regardless of the cause, and that can cause significant problems. The real goal in management is to have a manageable level of pain, not to get rid of all pain. There are several steps that can be taken, and these are sometimes difficult to do because of barriers to access. But it makes sense to do the simplest and safest things first. And these are non-drug steps. Things like physical activity. Walking is perfectly good to help reduce pain. Also, self-management education can give you some confidence in managing chronic pain when you're on your own. There's also physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological therapy, better sleep, which usually means less alcohol, and seeing a chiropractor or getting biofeedback and massage. If that's not enough, non-opioid drugs like Tylenol or Motrin and Advil or naproxen or Aleve can help. If those don't work, then it's time to consider something stronger. Sometimes that's opioids, but there's not great evidence that opioids are good for long-term pain in most people.
Do you have any advice for people suffering from chronic pain?
Well, it's important to work with a variety of providers who are working together to help you. The goal, again, is manageable pain so you can live a productive life. This can include physical therapy, most people can walk, to treat any underlying depression or anxiety, and to avoid further injuries. Finally, the National Pain Strategy is laying out a strategic roadmap to improve pain management system in this country.
Where can listeners get more information about managing chronic pain?
Listeners can go to the NIH website, nih.gov, and type in National Pain Strategy.
Thanks, Chad. I've been talking today with Dr. Chad Helmick about ways to manage chronic pain. If you're experiencing daily pain, talk with your healthcare provider to ensure you have the correct diagnosis and know how to manage your condition. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwon is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with 3 things. 1, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have a limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-hee. I've been talking today with Seung-hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Can gangs run prisons? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Let's consider private prison companies, the 3 largest being CoreCivic, Geo Group, and the Management and Training Corporation, MTC for short. MTC's Wilkinson County, Mississippi facility, a maximum security prison, was the subject of an October 2019 expose in Prison Legal News. The article says that 80% of the 900 prisoners in this Mississippi max run by MTC are gang-affiliated, 80%, and that weapons assaults and stabbings are all too common. Part of the reason? The prison has been paying guards. Remember, this is a for-profit corporation, just over the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, and not surprisingly, the annual staff turnover rate has been close to 90%, with as many as 1/3 of the 241 positions vacant. The company, MTC, says it's inaccurate to say that gangs have run the prison, but a recent independent audit, quote, noted that gang leaders decided which prisoners got jobs and perks, and further found that the warden speaks with gang lords' leaders and asks them to control their men. It ain't right, but it's the truth, the report quotes the now former warden as having said. The company insists it's making improvements. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1965. That was the day that the St. Louis Gateway Arch was completed in St. Louis. The project was the result of a nationwide design competition. The arch soars 630 feet above the ground and is the highest monument in the United States. The arch was made from 900 tons of stainless steel. It was meant to symbolize St. Louis's role as gateway to Western expansion. The groundbreaking ceremony for the project was held in 1959. Workers from multiple unions were involved in building the arch. 250 Boilermakers from Local 659 in Warren, Pennsylvania, built the arch sections. Iron workers completed the on-site assembly. Electricians and plumbers were involved in the construction as well. According to historian Clarence Lang, the construction of the arch also became a focus of local activists' frustration by the lack of integration in federally funded construction projects. In July of 1964, Percy Green, a black activist, and Richard Daley, a white activist, scaled up 125 feet of the unfinished arch. The 29-year-old Green was the chairman of the Employment Committee for the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE. As Green and Daley perched on the arch, they shut down construction that day. Other protesters held a press conference below. They demanded that 10% of the work on the project be provided to African Americans. No black workers were hired as skilled craftsmen on the project. After 4 hours, the men climbed down and were arrested. The action brought media attention to the lack of black workers, not just at the St. Louis Arch, but at construction projects throughout the nation. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Monday, October 28, 2019. I'm Mark Boulanger. As working people around the world search for decent work which can sustain themselves and their families, more and more are turning to cooperatives. A recent survey conducted by the International Labour Organization, the ILO, shows that unions are becoming increasingly interested in either establishing or supporting cooperatives. The ILO is a UN agency focused on matters of work in the world. Simel Isim is the manager of the ILO's cooperatives unit.
The ILO recognizes the relevance of cooperatives to its mandate toward achieving social justice since its foundation in 1919. It's the only specialized agency of the United Nations with an explicit mandate on cooperatives. This is reflected in its constitution, and the ILO has had a specialized unit on cooperative since 1920. Through their principles of solidarity, self-help and mutualism, and tenets of democratic governance, autonomous and independent management from authorities, reinvestment of surplus to their communities, voluntary and open membership, cooperatives are well positioned to actively contribute to shaping the future of work we want. Clearly, they cannot do it alone. Alliances, especially with trade unions, are critical. I want to share with you findings from a survey conducted by the ILO's Workers' Activities Department and Social Finance Unit. The survey includes responses from trade unions in 109 countries where they were asked about services they provide or want to provide their members. Among the unions, 85% said that it was important for labor organizations to work with cooperatives to improve standards of living. Half of the unions surveyed say that they provided financial services, and 2/3 said they provided educational services. 3/4 of the responding unions were interested in providing support for workers producer cooperatives. More than 2/3 were interested in providing healthcare, financial, and consumer services to their members. Interest in providing cooperative and other services was higher among unions where membership was strictly or largely extended to workers in the informal and rural economies. This trade union interest in cooperatives is consistent with historical experience. Trade unions have used the cooperative model to advance their members' welfare and deliver services to them. In recent years, trade unions have supported cooperatives, especially among informal economy workers, such as home care workers, domestic workers, taxi drivers in a number of countries, including Canada, Japan, Italy, Spain, the US, and the UK. In the platform economy, worker-owned and controlled cooperatives are emerging to eliminate intermediaries that withhold rights and benefits from their workers. In the Global South, organizations like the Self-Employed Women's Association of India use a dual strategy of unionism and cooperativism. While the union fights for the rights of the workers, the cooperative addresses livelihood concerns, including extending access to social protection and other services. Trade unions have also supported worker buyouts of enterprises following bankruptcies or retirement of business owners to turn them into worker cooperatives in countries like Brazil, Argentina, Spain, and Italy. Profound changes are taking place in the world of work and placing unprecedented pressures on workers. In this context, there is growing interest in economic models based on cooperation, mutualism, and solidarity. Worker cooperatives, as proponents of the democratization of ownership and of the economy, are in a unique position to contribute to the renewal of the social contract. They offer a convergence of alliances for proponents of economic democracy, decent work, and the social and solidarity economy.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Brr. And good thing I put all of the protective coverings on our hose bibs and whatnot, because it caused the running water fountain, the pools, to have a pretty good crust of ice on them. Yeah, wow. So we are going to get a high of about 60 to 63, overnight lows in the low 30s to upper 20s, or upper 20s to low 30s. And overnight, or tomorrow, should be a high of around 58 or so. Winds are light and variable currently. Will pick up tonight out of the north-northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And clear conditions should prevail, and that's one of the reasons why we're so cold. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.2 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 57%. Air quality index is at 18 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at 3. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 52 and sunny. Rome, 72 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. Kiev is 50 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 62 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 68 and fair. Tokyo is 60 degrees and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 60 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 51 degrees sunny with a wind advisory of gusts over 102 miles per hour. Oh, and also massive evacuations in actual cities. Near Crockett, for instance, where the Carquinez Bridge and the Maritime University was caught on fire. And New York, New York is 51 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Ahmed Abul Aninam of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Thousands of Iraqi protesters stood fast in Baghdad's central Tahir Square on Sunday, defying a bloody crackdown that killed scores over the weekend and an overnight raid by security forces to dispel them. Young men had erected barricades on a bridge leading to the capital's fortified green zone against security forces, who continued to lob tear gas canisters not only toward them, but at them. Medical and security forces said over 80 people had been injured. "We give you our life and blood, Iraq," they chanted. At least 74 Iraqis were killed on Friday and Saturday and hundreds wounded as demonstrators clashed with security forces and militia groups in a second wave of this month's protests against Prime Minister Abdul Madhi's government. About 231 people have been killed in October alone. Despite the OPEC members' vast wealth of oil, many Iraqis live in poverty or have limited access to clean water, electricity, basic health care, and education. Iraq is struggling to recover from years of conflict following the U.S.-led invasion in 2003 that overthrew dictator Saddam Hussein.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Steve Holland and Phil Stewart, also of Reuters, bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump announced on Sunday yesterday that Islamic State leader Abdul Bakr al-Baghdadi killed himself during a daring overnight raid by elite U.S. Special Operations Forces in Syria. A major victory as he fights a Democratic-led impeachment inquiry. Oh, do tell. Baghdadi died alongside 3 of his children by detonating an explosive-laden vest. See, they were calling it a suicide vest. Trump keeps calling it a suicide vest. Shouldn't it be called a tactical operations vest? We killed him, but he killed himself. I'm trying to figure that out. And then, of course, we know it was him because we were able to get DNA results in 15 minutes. Which beggars the question, how was an elite special operations force able to dig through a collapsed tunnel blown up by a suicide vest? Able to get the tissue samples and a result in 15 minutes. if you're going to spike the ball, just don't embellish. If the guy's guilty, you don't need to make him more guilty. It only makes you look weird, especially with all those unconnected Ethernet cables in that obvious photo op that was staged. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. In fact, we're going to meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.